So there's this situation developing in Bangladesh that's been on my radar lately, and and I just had a feeling, you'd be interested in this too. I mean, with Sheikh Hasina kind of stepping down from the scene, and now Muhammad Yunus is taking the reins, as the interim leader.
Right.
It really makes you think about all the diplomatic signals coming out of India, during this whole
Mhm.
transition. Like, what does it really mean for their relationship going forward?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's these moments, these transition periods where you really see the real dynamics between countries come out in the open. And, this shift in Bangladesh, it's not just some internal thing. It shined a big spotlight on that, that intricate and long-standing relationship with India they have right there on their border. And we see the usual, the diplomatic song and dance,
Right, the expected stuff.
the official statements and all that, but it's super important to kind of, look beyond that surface level stuff and see what might be simmering underneath.
For sure. For sure. I mean, we're talking about like Prime Minister Modi sending this letter to Yunus for Bangladesh's Independence Day, right?
Mm.
And on the surface, it's all very like celebratory and, referencing their shared history
Yeah.
and wishing them well on their journey towards peace and prosperity, the kind of stuff you'd expect.
Yeah, exactly. That formal communication is like, it's basically diplomatic protocol 101.
Right.
Where Modi's like, Excellency, I extend my heartfelt congratulations to you and the people of Bangladesh on the occasion of your National Day. And he's emphasizing that historical connection with the 1971 Liberation War. He's tapping into this deep well of shared history,
Right.
That war where India, played such a crucial role. It's something that comes up again and again in their interactions because it's like the bedrock of their relationship. And phrases like, how the relationship has grown across various sectors, bringing tangible benefits to both our peoples. That's standard diplomatic language, yeah.
Oh, for sure.
But it also kind of serves to highlight, the existing areas where they already cooperate and that,
Mhm.
that stated desire for that to keep going. It's like setting a positive tone, as they potentially start this new chapter.
Yeah, it's like a carefully crafted opening statement, right?
Mhm.
Emphasizing that established goodwill. But then almost out of nowhere, we hear these reports about attacks on Hindu minorities in Bangladesh. And it kind of feels like this jarring shift in the narrative, this complication you just can't ignore.
Exactly. This is where those underlying complexities, they really come into sharp focus. And while the Bangladeshi side has, offered explanations suggesting these incidents are driven by political motivations, not communal animosity,
Right.
the fact remains that these vulnerable communities are facing violence. And for India, given its historical ties to the very formation of Bangladesh and, the shared demographics across the border,
Of course.
the well-being of minorities there is naturally a major concern, and it resonates deeply within India itself.
Yeah, and India hasn't just stayed quiet about it either.
Yeah.
We heard from the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S.J. Shankar, who mentioned that they are engaged with the interim government on multiple levels. And that, to me, sounds like a very deliberate way of saying we are paying very close attention and we expect these issues to be handled appropriately.
Yeah, that phrase engaged on multiple levels that carries a lot of weight in diplomatic circles. It suggests that the dialogue isn't just happening between the top leaders. It
Right.
likely involves discussions at various bureaucratic levels, maybe even intelligence sharing and security consultations. It suggests a pretty comprehensive effort to understand the situation and make sure India's expectations are clear.
Right.
Then you have Foreign Secretary Misri's trip to Bangladesh back in December, and his description of the attacks on religious institutions as regrettable, which might sound kind of mild to the average person.
Sure.
But in diplomacy, that's a very carefully chosen word. It signals official disapproval and concern without using really strong language that could escalate tensions.
So it seems like they're really walking a tightrope here, right? Maintaining this public image of strong ties while privately and through these diplomatic channels, making sure their concerns about these very serious issues are being heard loud and clear.
Exactly. And to really get why India is so invested in this relationship beyond the shared history, you got to consider the strategic importance of Bangladesh.
Right.
You said it earlier, that crucial neighbor, almost like a really close relative. Think about it, the long shared border, the massive amount of trade flowing between them, the cooperation on things like counterterrorism and regional security, and Bangladesh's super important location geopolitically in the Bay of Bengal region. It's a partnership that affects a ton of vital interests for India.
Yeah, it's way more than just being friendly neighbors.
Yeah.
There are some really concrete strategic and economic things at play here.
Oh, for sure.
You mentioned trade and security.
Hmm.
I mean, Bangladesh has become a huge trading partner for India. And when it comes to regional stability, a peaceful and stable Bangladesh is absolutely in India's best interest strategically.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the emotional aspects stemming from 1971. India's role in Bangladesh's independence created this unique bond,
Right.
a feeling of shared destiny in a way. And that historical involvement, it comes with a certain level of expectation, a hope that those values of inclusivity and secularism that were so central to the liberation will continue to be upheld, especially when it comes to the rights and safety of all communities.
Right.
It's a relationship built on this, huge historical event, which naturally carries long-term implications and, yeah, expectations.
So that brings us to right now with this interim leadership in place.
Mhm.
And there's this big question mark hanging over everything.
Yeah.
Isn't there? How will this transition affect Bangladesh's approach to its relationship with India?
Right.
Will the new government prioritize that strong partnership they've built? Or could we see things shift in a different direction?
That's the million-dollar question everyone's watching right now. And as we've
Yeah.
discussed, the public interactions are very formal and diplomatic.
Right.
We see the polite letters, the carefully planned meetings, the measured statements, but the reality is both sides are probably in this period of careful observation. India will be watching the new government's actions and pronouncements really closely, trying to figure out their priorities and where they're headed.
For sure.
Will they see a continued alignment of those strategic and economic interests?
Mm.
Will those concerns about minority rights be addressed adequately? The next few months will be crucial in answering those questions.
So if we try to, sum everything up,
Yeah.
we're seeing this interesting kind of duality on the surface. There's this continued expression of goodwill and shared values, you know, prominently displayed in Modi's letter.
Right.
But just below that, there are these very real and pressing concerns, particularly about the treatment of minority communities, which India is clearly addressing through these various diplomatic channels.
Yeah.
It feels like a really sensitive point in time for this important relationship with the future direction still very much up in the air.
Exactly. It's this complex mix of deep historical ties, significant strategic factors that bind them together, and very real on-the-ground concerns that could cause friction.
Right.
Those formal communications offer a sense of continuity and stability, but the diplomatic engagements and those carefully worded statements about minority issues, they highlight those underlying sensitivities and the potential for the relationship to change depending on how the new leadership in Bangladesh handles these challenges.
It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about as you've gone on this deep dive with us into the nuances of this situation. I'm wondering, what do you think will ultimately be the most decisive factor in shaping the long-term direction of the India-Bangladesh relationship? Is it those deep historical connections that bind them, the growing economic interdependence that benefits both sides, or maybe that consistent commitment to protecting the rights and ensuring the well-being of all communities within Bangladesh? It's a complex situation with a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, it really is.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in.